I want to thank everybody for being here this evening, joining us on how to navigate the murky waters of an insurance claim. There is a learning curve that comes with this, and we hope that after tonight you'll have a better sense of a direction of how to ask for things and what to do, what not to do, and understanding the claims process from a little different perspective. I'm joined, my name's Reno, this is Ken, and I'm joined by Kyle, which I think is there he is in the back. Just a couple of things I want to mention. The Q&A, the questions and answers will happen live as we're going through our slides. And if you can give Kyle a moment to come over and get that mic to you, because everyone wants to hear your questions. There are a lot of really good questions we answer here. I want to acknowledge, first of all, that we're all here with a heavy heart. We have been to many of these firestorms, and our thoughts and prayers go out to the families that have lost loved ones in this event. We're going to be talking about tips, strategies, so that you're able to maximize your recovery under your policy language. That is a contract. You bought a policy. It's now a contract. You've unlocked it by having this event. Excuse me. Just a little bit of background on us really quickly. We're the Greenspan Company. We've been in business since 1947. Equally as important, we're a Bay Area company. We've been involved in one capacity or another in all the recent firestorms in California and up in Washington and down in Malibu. And so we've got a lot of insight as to how the insurance companies do things, what they expect you to do. You've got obligations, they've got obligations. And we're going to share all those tips and strategies with you so that you can help yourselves through the process. It is daunting. It is a maze. It's not, most people always think that the insurance company's going to come out and just start paying you money. And from what we gather right now, Farmers is the only one that has stepped up to the plate. How many people are here with Farmers? Okay. If you're not aware of it, they are actually paying limits on your building, other structures, personal property, and loss of use. Is that correct?
Sure. No? I think that's incurred.
Yeah.
If it's a residential.
Yeah. So they're the only ones thus far that have stepped up and done that. We recognize that losing your home is stressful enough, but now you have to suddenly navigate insurance language, and you're expected to understand how to prepare a claim, how to present it, how to negotiate it. And that's why we're here. We want to share our knowledge with you guys, and it's our way of giving back to the community so that you can help yourselves through the process. We'll talk about conditions, definitions. We'll talk about what replacement cost value means. We'll talk about actual cash value, the extended replacement cost, all these nuances that you need to be aware of. Oftentimes we get asked, what is a public adjuster? What is it that you guys do? And we put together a video to kind of explain it best. It'll take a moment. And
when a wildfire strikes, you watch helplessly in disbelief as your home and your community are ravaged. As you console your family, you begin to think about the financial recovery. How can you possibly overcome this? The insurance company will require you to prepare a detailed claim in a form they deem acceptable to determine how much you are owed. First, you will need to recreate what your house looked like before the wildfire. This includes gathering plans and photographs that hopefully weren't destroyed. Next, in most cases, in order to collect all of your personal property benefits, you will need to inventory every single item, thousands and thousands, including their age, condition, and current replacement cost. And if you are considering rebuilding, moving, downsizing, or enlarging, there's no way of knowing how your insurance company will respond to your goals. Living on the West Coast, you have heard countless stories about the difficulties in recovering all that the insurance company owes. Many insurance companies rotate adjusters, making it very difficult to keep the process moving forward. There must be someone who has your best interest in mind that can assist you through this process. What if you had your very own adjuster, known as a public adjuster? an experienced professional whose team works exclusively in your corner, preparing, presenting, and negotiating the optimum amount for your claim so that you don't have to. That is exactly what we provide for you. Our job is to make sure you are comfortable and to get the most from the insurance company while working through the roadblocks they often present so that you can get back to your life and family sooner. That's what we do. Our firm has represented homeowners like you in every major firestorm event in the last 70 years, and we have garnered hundreds of letters of commendation that we're happy to share with you. So if you've lost your home to a recent wildfire, don't stress, don't wait. Call the Greenspan Company Adjusters International today. We're ready to get to work for you.
Okay, so that's what a public adjuster is, and that's what we do. If you were to look at your claim as a pie, this is what it would look like. Your biggest piece of the pie, the meat and potatoes I always call it, is the dwelling. And your dwelling on your policy will have a basic limit. How many people here have looked at their policy? How many people here understand how it responds to the fire? Less than 10%.
How many people have asked for a certified copy of your policy of insurance? That's it. Number one thing you need to do when you get home or you talk to your adjuster, send an email, follow it up, and request a certified copy of the policy. You need that to understand your policy. And the policies you may have from a year or 2 years ago may not be current with respect to new endorsements.
So I just want to elaborate a little bit on that. Certified, it means it's stamped by underwriting, and it comes in. It takes a couple of weeks for it to come in. There may be pushback on receiving that certified copy. We hear it all the time. They're not responding. So you just got to stay on them, because if you don't have the current rule book, you're not in the game. The adjuster may be citing a certain paragraph of the policy when you're making claim for certain areas, and if you can't reference what he or she is talking about, you're going to be at a disadvantage, and that's the last thing you want. Okay, so get a certified copy. Thanks. Okay. Dwelling basic limit is going to be that one number that talks about just what the basic coverage is on the dwelling, and then there's an extended limit. How many people here have heard that term, the extended replacement cost endorsement? Okay. Almost all your policies have them, and we're going to be talking about how that works and how you qualify for it. And the next bucket is personal property. It's this here. It's another big bucket. We hear this all the time in these firestorms. Oh, my stuff isn't worth much. And the way to look at it is not like that. You're to get paid full replacement cost value plus tax plus delivery plus setup. And in the average house that may be 1,800 to 2,800 square feet, there could be anywhere between 6 to 8 to 10,000 line items when you really add it up. So don't fool yourselves. And just because the insurance company is giving you maybe 50% up front, or some of you 75%, they want you to walk away. They hope that you walk away, and they get to keep that money. So if you do the proper work and put the inventory together properly, you'll get there. We see it every day. Personal property replacement cost holdback, we'll talk about what that means. Separate structures, outbuildings, workshops, sheds, walkways, driveways, patios. That's the other separate structures coverage. That's bucket B. So your claim you have 4 separate claims going on at the same time. They're typically broke down with an A, B, C, and D designation in your policy. And we're going to talk about all 4. But separate structures is bucket B. Personal property is bucket C. And, hold on, going back. And code upgrades. Code upgrades has to do with bringing your building up to today's standards. Up at the car fire, what happened was something very interesting, where they rolled back the code to, I think, 1997 standards, because a lot of people actually were very underinsured. And the problem was, how do I rebuild if I don't have enough code upgrade money available in my policy? So the building department and the powers that be rolled back that issue, and that was very interesting. I've never seen that happen. Have you, Ken?
No.
No. So it could pose a problem. we'll be talking about code. ALE means additional living expense, and that's here. That's the temporary housing money, the bucket that pays for that. And then we're going to, hot topic here is always the debris removal. There's a lot of chatter about it. We're going to straighten that out and tell you about how that works. And then trees coverage is here. Your landscape and trees, you have separate coverage for those. Moving on. So we're going to go from we're going to go right through bucket A, B, C, and D. We're going to start with the big meat and potatoes. There's 3 scenarios that you are going to fall into. Either you're not going to rebuild, you're going to purchase a replacement property, or you're going to rebuild right where that house was. And depending on which bucket you fall under here, it will impact some of the decisions that you're going to make and how the policy responds. So we're going to use this $400,000 throughout this workshop as just a base number, a base limit. So for example, if you have a base limit, again at $400,000, and you choose not to rebuild, here's the scenario you fall under. $400,000, 10% of that is typically what they allow for other structures, again, workshops, detached garages, fences, walkways, etc. Unless, again, and I want a caveat to that is unless you've built a large workshop and you told the agent about it and they came out and they said, okay, you need additional coverage, this number may be bigger, but typically it's 10% of the base limit. Debris removal is 5% additional coverage, okay, and it gets unlocked only if you max out this bucket, because debris removal is part of reconstruction. So if you don't max out this 400 and above and prove that the damages are greater, this does not get unlocked. So it's really important to understand that. We'll be talking about that in a little more detail. Landscaping is 5% additional. That's trees, shrubs, and bushes. Some policies are 500 per tree, per bush, per shrub. Some are 750 and some up to 1,000 typically. So you'd have to look at the language there. But these are stackable coverages. These are on top of the base limit. And here's that word, that extended replacement cost endorsement. Some policies are 20, some are 25, some are 50, some kick up to 100 and 150. Depends on who the carrier is. Additional, and this is interesting here. For those of you that have the Hartford, Safeco.
Safeco and Liberty Mutual are the ones that
and the
have
Hartford
it.
as well. In the language of the policy, the base limit, you have an additional 50 to 100% in bucket A, B, C, and D. So you may have an average policy, all of a sudden it just kicks up quite a bit, and it has to be a declared catastrophe, of course, which this was, and that unlocks this coverage. And we've been meeting a lot of people that have this policy and they're not aware of it. And quite honestly, the adjusters from out of state sometimes aren't aware of it because you're dealing with out of state adjusters and they're not that familiar sometimes with the California laws, with the policies. And then you've got code upgrade. So you're not going to collect, if you do not rebuild on your property, if you choose not to, you don't qualify for this extended replacement cost. The additional, this bucket here in code, these have to be incurred. I'm going to let Kenny kind of explain these 3 buckets a little more in detail. Take it away, Ken.
Okay. Well, just clarification with regards to the unlocking of debris removal. What that means is, hypothetically, maybe your damages are only $350,000. That means you have another $50,000 towards debris removal. If your damages are above $400,000, then you have an additional, this example, $20,000 available for debris removal. So you have the coverage. It's just if your losses exceed the limits, then there's an additional amount of coverage for debris removal. With regards to the extended replacement costs, Farmers has 25%, and my understanding with Farmers is that although they're paying the stated limit, they're not paying that extra 25% based on what Reno said is true. You typically have to incur it. State Farm has 20%, Safeco has 50%, AAA has 50% as well. And the way it works is you certainly want to measure the loss, and you want to measure it based on what it would cost with like kind and quality to repair the damaged building. Not code upgrades, just to put it back the way it was. If you had lath and plaster, you're entitled to that. Hardwood floors as well as carpet and pad, you're entitled to that. And so you want to measure it. And if the measurement of the loss is greater than $400,000, in this example, it's $600,000, that's the amount of coverage you would have. You will get that, but only if you either rebuild on site or you replace. And if you decide you want to replace it with a building somewhere else, it doesn't have to be here, it could be in another state, you just have to make sure that that building that you purchased, that home without the land, because they don't insure the land, has a value of $600,000 or more. That shows to the insurance company that you've spent $600,000 in the building improvements on replacing the property. If you end up buying a building and the value of that building is only $500,000 without the land, then you collect $100,000, but you still have $100,000 left on the table. You could remodel the kitchen or the bathrooms if they're not up to par. As long as you expend the money, you get it. You just have to expend it. With respect to code upgrades, it's the cost that you incur typically in rebuilding on the site to meet current code. That's sprinklers, LED lighting. In Santa Rosa, I think they require battery packs in the garage. Solar, I'm not sure if they're going to require solar roofs. I know there was talk about in the state that all new homes had to have solar panels or solar roofs. It's going to be seismic upgrades, foundations, and it's the incremental costs. It's not a cost for a whole new foundation that's code compliant. You get paid under the dwelling coverage for the foundation as it was. It's the incremental cost of having deeper footings. And with respect to the catastrophe clause, typically, and it's only really 2 policies that I know that have it. There'll be an endorsement. Quick story, Safeco, I was dealing with an adjuster. The insured only had a 50% extended replacement cost, wasn't enough. I remember from the Lake County fires that there's a special Safeco endorsement, and it says that in the event of a catastrophe, the 50% extended replacement cost will double. So they had 100%. But the only carriers I know that have it is Liberty Mutual and Safeco. And they're California endorsements. And that's the difference. All these policies that are out there, they all have California endorsements. But if the adjusters aren't from California, they don't know about it. So that's why you want to get a certified copy of your policy.
Any questions on that so far? Please, yes. We're going to bring a mic over. Hold on one second. This is Kyle's workout for the day. He doesn't have to go to the gym.
Can I go to my local 3A insurance company to get this?
It has to, good question. It has to come from underwriting typically. So you can have your agent request it from the agent, but it comes directly from the carrier. And it takes a couple of weeks, folks, so be proactive, not reactive. Get that policy. That is your rule book. You got to have it. Any other questions on what we've covered thus far on how to qualify if you don't rebuild?
Should we talk about fair market value maybe?
Yeah. So in California, when you have a total loss, meaning the house constructive total, it's on the ground, the insurance company has the right to change the valuation method. You all have what's called replacement cost coverage, and that's fine. But what they're going to do, and they may do, and they're doing now, is doing a fair market value, otherwise known as appraised value, otherwise known as actual cash value. Those 3 terms are one and the same, so to speak. So they'll do an appraisal on your property based on sales in the area, and then they're going to strip away your land value. And for those of you that are land heavy, it becomes problematic. So what's left is the building value, because they don't insure land. What's left is the building. So that's your initial check. That's your small check. And basically, if you perform, either rebuild or purchase a replacement home, then they owe you up to the measured replacement cost value. So it is super critical that the measurement of the loss of the replacement cost value is correct. You need to put them on the hook for the true value. Do not leave it up to them. It does not make it doesn't make sense. It's your duty, it says it in the policy, when you're making a claim to the insurance company. They're not making a claim to you. And they don't have a duty to perform. But if you leave it up to the insurance company to do it, what we find when these numbers come in, there's errors, there's omissions. They don't have to be accurate. There is no law that mandates that they be accurate. It's just an opinion of what they want to pay you. Why would you do that? You need to be proactive and pursue the claim. So the replacement cost value is what they're going to be on the hook for. So the initial appraised value check is the first payment, and then they owe you up to the measured loss. Okay, and you get that difference once you perform.
Just an add-on to that. Some carriers don't do appraised values, and they'll do a repair estimate, and then they'll apply depreciation. A small amount based on use, condition, typically floor coverings, appliances. When it's applied that way, it's typically only about 10%. So the actual cash value of the repairs, when it's done that way, and they don't have to. California law is when it's a total loss, it's market value for the building only. When it's a partial loss, it's replacement less depreciation. But when you do run into that scenario, it's really critical to get the replacement dollars up as high as possible. And the biggest problem that we ran into in Santa Rosa, you may have heard, it's called demand surge. Prices were up 25%. Imagine what it's going to be like here. You know, we're trying to figure it out. I just thought about it. Well, there aren't any contractors here. So now contractors are going to be coming from Southern California, Oregon, Nevada. Where are they going to put their workers? You got hotel, you got travel, you've got transportation, you've got rental cars. So I think prices are going to go way up. But when you're dealing with your insurance company, you want to make sure that the measurement of the loss reflects exactly what you had. Some of these older homes here have the old one-by material subfloor. It's tongue and groove. It's not plywood. There's a big difference in the pricing. You may have clear heart redwood siding or redwood beams. That's big money, and you're entitled to it. You don't have to necessarily replace with it or rebuild, but you're entitled to collect it. So I'm just going to pass out two sample estimates. One's in Xactimate, one's an Excel version. And it just gives you an appreciation of the detail that you want to make sure the insurance company has. Get as many pictures as you can, pre-loss photos if you have them. If the home was purchased in the last 10 years, it should show up on some of the realtor sites with pictures. If you've had an appraisal done in the last 5 or 10 years, typically they'll have pictures of the home. Go out there, secure those photos. It will help immensely, not just in the recreation of the building, but also on the personal property claim.
So I want to touch base on what the language of insurance is. There, back in the late 80s, the insurance companies created this software program called Xactimate. And Xactimate is basically just what I just said. It's a software program, and it's garbage in, garbage out. It's only as good as the person or the information going into it. It's going to spit out a number. And if you sit down, and most of you might have or will be sitting down with a building consultant from the insurance carrier, I've heard stories where like 45 minutes and they've captured the whole house. That's ludicrous. They should spend 2, 3, 4, 5 hours with you to capture all the details of the house, the crown molding, whatever makes your house unique. If they're just doing generalities and just a quick sketch and they're out of here and they're going back to Georgia or Alabama, we got a question down here, then that's a problem. So remember, they don't have to be accurate, and it should take a while to put this proper Xactimate estimate of your dwelling together. When you get it, and by the way, you are entitled to, they're going to come up with some numbers regardless. And when you're entitled to get that. The question you should have is, how did you arrive at the figures? And is the detail correct? Is the scope of the damage proper, meaning the area of damage that was captured, all the nuances of the house? And is the price correct? Those are the two areas we see a problem with. We have a question here. Hi, Richard. Thanks for joining us.
That's on.
Gold mic?
I don't, if you can hear me or not, but I just met with an adjuster, public adjuster, came from Florida, sat down with us at Starbucks, 45 minutes, and he got his Xactimate laptop out and he was plugging in how many doors, how many this, and we were trying to tell him, we got all these custom things, and he said, don't burn your brain up. And we said, well, what are we supposed to be doing? The whole point was he was trying to qualify just the base limit.
Right.
That's all he was going to do, and what I hear from you gives me pause.
Yeah, you should be paused. And by the way, you mentioned public adjuster. Was it a public adjuster or was it an insurance company adjuster?
He was, I'm sorry, an insurance adjuster.
Got it.
From Florida.
Right.
That was hired by
Hired gun, yeah.
the insurance company.
Sure. You're going to see a lot of that. How many people here are dealing with out-of-state estimators, and pretty much all is? They're in shambles. This is unprecedented. And you're going to be having to deal with these out-of-state people and these errors and omissions that come up. So just be wary. Be a good consumer. Be an advocate for yourself. It's okay to do that. You bought this contract. You're entitled to it. No one's taking advantage of the insurance company. It's a matter of understanding what you're truly entitled to. And you get one shot. Okay? These guys want to go home. They're from all over the country. They're in and out. 2 weeks and they're done. And then it gets switched to another adjuster. And then another adjuster, and then another adjuster, and the fourth adjuster doesn't agree with the second adjuster's methodology, and then the seventh adjuster doesn't agree with the first. It gets to be messy. So everything you do with the adjuster should be communicated via email. For example, if you have a phone conversation, then you need to memorialize it right after that. My understanding of today's conversation is bullet point, bullet point, bullet point. Please confirm. That way, when that adjuster leaves and it gets reassigned, you'll have some kind of electronic paper trail, because you're going to be dealing with multiple people. Don't think or get married to that one person. Got a question over here, Richard?
By the way, put everything in writing. Advances, requests, put in writing. Confirmation, put in writing. You
Everything
need to
should
do
be in
that.
writing. Absolutely. Yes.
So, and
It's on. Go ahead.
It's
Speak
on.
right
anyway,
into the mic. Yeah, it's okay.
So, two things. One, I'm only communicating with the adjuster through email. That
Okay.
way I've got a record and
Good.
it's chained. My second question, because you're talking about the value of the house and the property and all that kind of stuff. So our situation, we owned the mobile home, but it was in a mobile home park. So how does this fare to like that scenario?
Who's your carrier?
Century National.
Okay. Do you want to speak to that, mobile home?
Yeah, we don't typically handle mobile homes, but I remember someone came to me in Reading, and it was with State Farm. It was a special mobile home policy. It was unusual because they had the building limit, the personal property limit was the same as the building limit, but it's basically what it would cost to, it's either market value for a current mobile home that you would go out and buy in the same condition, or the cost to replace. Again, you have to take a look at the policy. But I don't believe it offers, separate structures. It will typically provide for living expenses. What I don't know is whether you qualify for the 2 or the 3 year time frame. Everyone should know that most policies are either 12 or 24 months for living expenses. Prior to this firestorm, the previous laws changed, and they would be required to give you 24 months in the event of a catastrophe. Now it's 3 years. You need to just check with Century National. Are they considering it, quote, residence, because it's all on residential properties where you get the 2 or the 3 years. I believe that they are required, but you need to check.
So the 3 years he's talking about is the loss of use. We'll be right there. The loss of use, your temporary housing, and we're going to get to that bucket. So we're going to, again, A, B, C, and D. We're still on A. We have a question here.
Are you going to go over structures that are still standing but damaged?
Partial
Yeah,
losses?
we can do
Sure,
that.
we'll do that right now.
Yeah.
So for those of you that suffered a partial loss, I don't know what's worse, either having the only house left for all over the place and everything's gone, and now you're stuck with this house that's smoked out, damaged. It's bad. So look at your policy. They've been changing the policies. We're starting to see farmers, by the way, has this thing now that smoke, soot, ash removal, and odor, $5,000 limit. That's all you get. How can you possibly move on? So look at your policies. These events, they're becoming more and more prevalent and more common here. The insurance companies are changing the language. That's why you need a current copy of that policy. So you need to, when you get access to it, the question I would have, knowing what I know, is how much hazardous materials has been floating in my house? All the soft goods, are they gone? There's going to have to be a swabbing. A lab gets results, lead, asbestos. There's a lot of toxic stuff floating around. So look at that very critically, okay? It's not uncommon. I mean, the house is not a constructive total. It's still standing, but you've got an incredible amount of damage that you're not aware of, the insulation. Yeah. And hopefully you don't have limitations for smoke, odor, and soot removal.
You're going to look at ceiling insulation in the attic. That's going to be probably smoked up or at least retain odor. You're going to want to clean everything, carpets, etc. You're going to, they may want to argue to just wash the walls, but you may want to paint it. So it depends. But if it's a little bit of light smoke, it doesn't mean you're not having to do all those things to permanently get rid of the odor. The big issue that you may run into is how, once the utilities are established, because you could clean your house, but if you don't have water or electric, you can't move in. But once utilities are established, then how much longer do they pay for you to live somewhere else? Once they've determined what the repairs are and it's done, you would obviously have to move back in. The problem I think a lot of people are going to have is a year from now or 6 months from now, all this demolition begins. Your house gets contaminated again.
Yeah.
So you better have some discussions that if you do move back into your home, is the carrier going to pay twice to have your house cleaned? And if they say no, then you say, well, I guess I have to stay out of my house for 6 months because I can only get it cleaned one time.
We have a question here. We'll get to you. Okay. Sorry.
I heard about another fire, and the insurance company said, oh, the house looked good, the roof and everything, and they had an inspector go in and walk on the roof, and he says, there's something wrong here. They went in the attic, and they found that the glue in the plywood had been delaminated, so the insurance company was trying to say that the roof was okay, but he said, no, it needs to be completely replaced.
Yeah. So heat damage is very bad. You've got, if you think about the radiant heat that's going on around the house, if your house is standing, the heat's in the walls, and you've got electrical wiring with, with sheathing. Has that melted? Has it fused? So there's a lot of ancillary damage that you need to think about beyond what the obvious is to your eye. It's what's in the walls. Yes.
Yeah, I have a question. You mentioned ongoing things from additional stuff in the future. We already got our letter from our insurance company saying that, as of January, we're not insured with them anymore. That we're in an uninsurable area now.
Okay.
So who's the
is
carrier?
that legal? American Reliable?
I think there's some language that exists that have to, if your house was damaged or destroyed, that they have to allow you to renew, and I think it's 2 years. So first question is, was your house destroyed in the fire?
No, outbuilding was. It was bigger than the house.
Okay. That may change things, but I'm not so certain that they can, but...
DOI, get on the DOI. I would contact the Department of Insurance and see what the bylaw says there, their website. So for those of you, this is a good question. He brings up a really good point. Am I gonna get canceled or non-renewed? Those are the bean counters in the back room at the office at the insurance companies. We get this question quite often. If I hire you, are they going to cancel my policy? Or am I ever going to get a policy renewed again? And we don't know. The answer is we just don't know. They're a business. The insurance companies are a for-profit business. They have stockholders they owe answers to, and they're going to make decisions based on that zip code. Does it make sense to if anybody even rebuilds, what's the risk exposure for them?
I want to just clarify. So I don't believe that they can if your home's been destroyed, they can't cancel you. They got to allow you to renew, and basically, and I think, and Kyle may know, I think it's at least 2 years, and it may be a year after you rebuild, and then they can decide we're not going to renew you. But typically, they have to allow you time to either replace or rebuild, and it may be a year afterwards. Kyle, any feedback?
Question?
I'm Pat Bickford. I work with Greenspan. I think Ken is right. That's what I understand. But I was going to add another point to the question when they talked about the 5,000 limit if you just have soot damage.
Yes.
Look through your house for a broken window. As a result of the Santa Rosa fire, I had a fire that turned out to be $1 million claim, and it was because there was one broken window and there was just smoke throughout the house. But because there was that one broken window, which was $700, that was all that was damaged. They had to fix the whole house.
So it unlocked the coverage, is that?
Yeah, all you have to do is
great
show
point.
physical damage to the property.
We have a question? Hi.
Oh, well, it's not really a question, it's something we've run into with the smoke damage. 'Cause
Okay.
we've lost outbuildings, and it's pretty bad inside, just the smoke. And we were told, basically, I mean, I had to fight just to ask to get it cleaned, and we have a lot of coverage. I mean, we're covered high. We have a lot, and they're like, we're not cleaning this. He said, we're not gonna sweep. I have ash this big,
Yeah.
black, blown in under our door that went all over our house, and he said, we're not sweeping that up for you. And I'm like, I mean, of course, I threw a fit, and they're like, okay, we'll have the company.
They're arguing to clean your home?
They're
arguing.
arguing to clean my house.
Who's your carrier?
Allstate.
Allstate.
Now, okay, this is just the beginning. The next thing is, now, since the fire, somehow a huge rat came in our house and decided to destroy the blinds. He said, we're not covering that either.
Yeah, vermin coverage is, vermin is not covered, it's excluded.
Right.
So if you have squirrels, rats chewing, whatever it is,
Right.
or a bear
Okay.
comes in, they don't cover it.
Then the smoke damage thing, this goes even a little bit further, is you go, and one thing I want to say to people is you need to check your roof.
Yes.
Because we didn't even think about that, and thank goodness somebody did, and they walked up there, and our roof is burnt. They have to replace the whole thing, and we had no idea.
Yeah, radiant heat is I mean, that fire's burning at 3,000 degrees. If you're near a fireplace at home, if you've ever been, and you can be 10, 15, 20 feet, and you can still feel that radiant heat on a small fireplace, you can imagine, acres and acres going. It's throwing a lot of heat. So don't fool yourself. If your house is standing, I get all the electrical wiring checked, all the insulation. Got to get up and check the rafters. You've got exposed wood there. Radiant heat is very damaging.
And what you can do is just, if you're having an issue with the carriers, look, I want to get a hygienist and I want to do some
Swabbing, yeah.
wipe samples. And if they show any carbon, they got to clean. They got to clean. And if your roof is partially damaged along the edges, it doesn't mean they just repair that elevation. You are entitled to a matching roof. Now, typically, that's a big argument, but at minimum, it's a line of sight issue. So you may be entitled to get your whole roof replaced, even if it's partially damaged.
Yeah, yep. Okay. We need the mic over here, Kyle or Richard. No eating, Richard. No breaks. Okay, so we're going to get right to you. So if you purchase a replacement property, a lot of people we've met and talked to are going to move and buy an existing property that's already built. So you'd still be entitled, of course, to the base limit. Other structures are still here. Debris removal, which we're going to talk about next. Landscaping, extended, you still qualify for that extended replacement cost. But what you don't qualify for is the code. The code only applies to rebuilding typically on site. Okay, it's written that, and you have to spend it to get it. They don't just hand it over. That's an incurred cost. Yes.
Can I go back to that, the smoke damage
Yes.
stuff? We have some cloth furniture that's saturated. We have bedding and stuff. We
Yeah,
have
mattresses and all that. Yeah.
a crib for a brand new, infant.
Gone.
And they said, oh, we're not replacing that. We'll check it out. We'll see if it cleans up and if it doesn't smell.
That's the problem. All right, so look, just put it this way, if you can picture this, if you can breathe and you have 2 legs, you'll get hired by the insurance company. How's that? Okay, I'm going to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, folks, and it's ugly. They are so inundated, desperate for help, they'll hire anybody right now. And it's unfortunate because you're dealing with these low, some people just don't have, the knowledge base and they want to go home. And so you're in this predicament that just be insistent, talk to the claims management, have it reassigned to somebody with more, and that's okay. You're the consumer. You can have it reassigned. Request a reassignment to somebody with more experience.
All the adjusters that are out there, they're kind of like catastrophe adjusters, contractors, et cetera, and they don't understand the policies, and they're not licensed, by the way, as adjusters. We're licensed. We're required to be licensed and bonded by the state.
We have a question back here? Hi.
Oh, hi. Whoa. So our guy that is like handling our insurance claim, he actually said that he was management, so he's like highest up.
Okay.
I'm having issues with him, so I feel kind of stuck. He's not really like a lot of people have like said they've talked about like how their house is built and everything. He's not really contacting us, and then when we do call him, he only kind of gives us what we want, and I keep asking him like what's our next step, and he like doesn't ever respond, so I feel kind of left in the dark.
You're at a disadvantage, and that's why we're here tonight. We're here to talk about these issues and kind of guide you along and help you look at things a little more critically. So that dude has a boss. He may be the claims manager, but there's somebody above him. It's corporate. It's a ladder. So just keep going up the ladder and the squeaky wheel gets the grease, folks. You've heard that a million times. Keep squeaking. There's a Department of Insurance got called tremendously in Santa Rosa. State Farm had lodged, there was tons of complaints lodged against State Farm in the way they handled it. Look, they have an obligation, the insurance companies have an obligation to have trained people ready to go. This is not the first time. There's catastrophes everywhere. There's, the hurricanes on the East Coast. There's these firestorms happening over and over. Do you think they would spend some money to train people and be prepared? They don't. I'm sorry, I get pretty emotional about it because I was a fire victim myself 25 years ago, so that's why I'm here. I just be proactive, pursue, and ask the questions. Another question back here, and then we'll be right with you.
My question's about timelines. So my situation is my house is gone, and I don't know what I want to do yet, and I don't even think the town's going to have any news for me about what I can even do for a long time. Right. So how long does the insurance company have to honor this, what's the time frame for how things have to get decided?
Great question. There's a 15-day, first of all, there's a 15-day response time that they're supposed to, if you ask the insurance adjuster a question, they have legally 15 days to get back to you. Okay? And she's talking about period of restoration. Yeah, you want to talk about that?
So, like I said earlier, under what's called your loss of use coverage, which is your additional living expenses, it depends on your policy. Some policies have a dollar limit, and most other policies have an unlimited amount, but it's limited by time. However, if it was before 24 months, and Santa Rosa, I think there's only 1 or 2 homes or 3 homes that are built. There's some more being built. A lot of them are not going to be done in 2 years. Just not going to happen. But you have up to 3 years, or the money runs out, or the time it would take with due diligence and dispatch. So, at some point in time, first of all, I don't think anyone's going to be able to even start doing anything till after the winter. And then you got to get plans and permits drawn up. And then you got to deal with construction, and who knows whether you can even find a contractor. So it could be 2 to 3 years easily before you're back in your home. Now, if you don't exercise due diligence and you procrastinate and you say, 2 years from now I'll hire an architect, then the insurance company can say, look, you're given up to 3 years, but you have to use due diligence and dispatch. I don't think right now anyone can make a decision on what they're going to do. And I don't think you need to make a decision. If the insurance company is telling you have to make a decision, you're making a mistake. And they're wrong. What you should be telling them, though, because if you say I'm going to replace, then the clock in their mind starts to tick because, well, you could probably replace 6 to 12 months from now, and that's all they would owe you in loss of use. So I think the answer is, because no one really knows what's going to happen, but you'll know maybe in 6 months after you find out more from the city, is you tell them, I'm planning to rebuild, but I won't be able to even make that decision till we hear what's going on with the city.
Yeah, we have a question back here.
Yeah, it's kind of a follow-up to that. We've decided not to rebuild, and our policy is going to support us for 2 years. If we are not able to find a replacement property in that 2 years, are we going to be penalized for it as far as getting support from the insurance company to find that replacement property, or?
You now have 3 years.
You have
just so-
3 years now.
Okay.
So your policy may say 24
So
months.
if we can't, I mean, because there's no houses here, so if we
Right.
can't find a replacement property in 3 years, are we going to be penalized for it?
As long as you're showing this is critical, as long as you're showing the insurance company that you're moving with diligence and dispatch, meaning I'm talking to realtors and they know about it. You send an email, it's dated and it's in your file. It's when you're silent for months and months and months, they don't know what you're doing. They're gonna wanna limit the amount of money they're paying you on the loss on the temporary housing. They're trying to value engineer your claim any which way they can. So it's important that you communicate with the insurance carrier, tell them what you're doing. I'm talking to architects, I'm talking to engineers, I'm house hunting, I'm doing something. Okay, that way they see that you're moving and that you want to keep that bucket flowing for your housing bucket. Yeah, we got a question here. Oh, sorry, here and then there.
Say you have a composition roof and it has to be replaced. Can you put a metal roof on it? Because they're usually more expensive than a comp.
You can you can do whatever you want to the home, but you only get paid for that composition roof if you decide to upgrade. However, if you had a shingle roof, which they won't require or allow you to rebuild, you have to go with either a comp or a fire retardant shake to meet code.
We've got a question back here.
What is the insurance company's time frame on these issues to get back with us? Aren't they under some guidelines on time?
Yeah, 15 days.
It's 15 days.
After you've reported the claim, they have 15 days to get.
They have to respond within a certain amount of time, and typically the communication is 15 days. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to comply.
To written requests. You want to put something in an email, and based on the Department of Insurance regs, they have within 15 days to respond. Now, does respond meaning they've called you and
Left you a
we're going to get
message?
back to you? I mean, they can do that.
Well, I mean, to close the case,
Oh, no, no, you have to prepare, present, and negotiate a claim. Usually the lifespan, I'll answer your question basically, the lifespan of a claim typically is 90 to 120 days. That's preparing it, presenting it, negotiating it. That's usually on a one-off fire, whether it's commercial or residential. But with the magnitude of what's going on and the chaos that the insurance companies have going on internally, it's going to be a little longer. Again, they'll give you some initial advance money, but keep calling, documenting, emailing, so you have a case. If they're not responding,
are any of the big insurance companies waiving the deductible yet?
no, I haven't heard anything.
They'll
about
never
that.
waive a deductible.
No.
Now,
You're asking them to step outside the policy. They won't.
So that's one more thing to bring up is that
We need
when
to
you
talk
measure, and then we got to move to the next slide. So when you measure your losses, it doesn't mean that the insurance company pays you your limit and then knocks off the deductible. If your loss for your personal property or your building exceeds the limit, the deductible comes off the loss. So in this example, if you've got a $5,000 deductible, but your building loss on an actual cash value basis is $410,000, you'll get $400,000, not $395,000.
Does that make sense?
Does everyone understand that?
We got a question here.
I'm going to be moving out of the area.
Okay.
And so you said we have the 3 years, for decision
Of housing.
of housing. I'm going to rent until I can find a place to buy.
Okay.
Does the cost of living cover rent?
In another area?
Yes.
It's what it would be in your area, right?
Okay.
Ken, am I correct?
Yes, but there's a problem.
Right.
There's nothing to rent in this area,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So this is going to be unprecedented. And by the way, in Santa Rosa, the rents went up 50%. And you already know what's going on here. And some people have to go to Sacramento and other areas.
By the way,
it's already a tight market. to
Your
begin with.
benefits follow you anywhere in the country, just so you know. Did that answer your question, ma'am?
Part of it. I also wanted to know the cost of living. would that be deducted from the limit of, your base limit of your claim?
No, that's bucket D is your temporary housing money, the loss of use of your home. That's a separate bucket. These buckets all are individual. They get paid at separate times, and they all have to be prepared, presented, and negotiated separately.
If I may, Rena, what we'd like to do, some of the questions are great questions we want to answer, but we'd like to do it in order of the slide. So this is building right now.
Yeah,
and then we
building,
want to
good
get,
point.
get going.
Well, talk about debris removal right here, hot topic. What'll happen is, I think they're roundtabling what they're going to end up doing with debris here. It's massive, everybody realizes that. The Cobb Fire, the Mountain Ranch, smaller firestorms are typically, when I say small, I'm talking about 1,000 homes, 1,100 homes. Typically, it's Cal Recycle. And in Santa Rosa, it was the Army Corps of Engineers. It might be a combined effort. We don't know. We haven't heard anything about how they're going to roll out the debris program, the debris removal program. What I would encourage everybody to do, it's just a recommendation or suggestion, I would sign up for the program. Because if you look at this 5% that you're allowed, in this example, you got 20 grand, the average cleanup for a 1,500 or 1,800 square foot house could run anywhere between $60,000 to $80,000. Okay, it is not cheap. You're not even going to know how much it costs. They just go in and do it if you sign up. And the way it works is that you'll sign up, you'll sign off on a hold harmless, which means they can come onto your property, and it comes in 2 phases. Phase 1 is they'll physically go out and they'll remove paint cans, propane tanks, car batteries, things like that are hazmat, and they'll get rid of them. The next phase 2 is they physically come out with the dump truck and the grapples and the bulldozers, and they start to remove the debris field. Eventually, the billing will catch up, maybe 8 to 10, 12 months later, and they're going to bill the insurance company. They'll send a bill to your insurance company, and they're going to be able to capture this, so that goes to them. And the difference, let's say it's $80,000, the difference the government pays. Okay, so it's funded. So for those of you, you can do it on your own and hire your own contractor. I got to tell you, based on the policies we've seen, I don't recommend it. Yeah. It just doesn't make sense because you're going to get stuck with the difference, and then it's going to come out of your base limit.
Just one other thing, Reno, and then I think Kyle mentioned a lot of people have additional living expenses, so maybe we'll skip to that slide.
Okay, yeah.
But on debris removal, Santa Rosa, they did a really good job. They were very active with the clientele. Typically, they'll remove your building. They don't typically remove sidewalks or walkways, and if you plan to rebuild, and you've got some really expensive driveways and they're not damaged, obviously you want to make sure they're protected. You want to point out to the debris removal companies that are coming out where your septic is, where your well is, to make sure they don't damage those areas. And if you've got a really expensive driveway and it's in good shape, maybe put some plywood over it. So those are things that you'll talk to when you sign up for the program. And typically they'll call you within 48 hours when they get to your site. Meet them out there.
Yeah, that's a good point. Make sure you're there on site to meet these guys because bull's in a china closet. They're going in, they rip it out, move on to your neighbor. Rip that out, and it's on and on it goes. So septic, anything they damage on the property that wasn't damaged, you're going to sign a waiver, okay, that doesn't hold them responsible for that. We have a question here. Yes.
I talked to my adjuster actually tonight or earlier today about this same thing, and what she told me was that FEMA or whoever the government entity would be, that it could be up to $80,000, and usually what they do is they come back to the insurance company and say, well, we'll give you 20, and they accept that and don't charge me. Is there a chance that I'm still going to get charged?
No, the debris removal part of your policy is right here. It's additional coverage that's built in there. It's additional coverage only if you exceed the 400. So you have to prove that the damages are greater than that base limit, and then you're unlocking these different coverages, like debris removal, like extended replacement cost, et cetera. Does that make sense?
Simplified answer is you're not going to have to pay for debris removal out of your own pocket.
Right.
The insurance company will pay for whatever is covered or not covered, and if it's not covered or it's been maxed out, the government pays for it.
Yeah, we just don't know
Once
what
in
the
a while
program
they
is.
pay for things.
The other concern, you were saying that we should be there on site. Well, in my particular situation, we're not allowed in where my house is. So let's say they came in.
It's going to be months, man.
It's
Don't
going to
worry.
be months.
Oh,
Yeah,
this is
you're
months
not-
out. They haven't even rolled out the program, and usually we know within 2 to 3 weeks, and these other firestorms. But due to the magnitude of this, they're roundtabling and they're trying to wrap their head around how to do it in an orderly fashion without damaging, other areas.
In
Yes,
Lake
Pat.
County, by the way,
Hold on.
Pat was going to mention it. In Lake County, they didn't do any debris removal, Reno, until after the rains. And it wouldn't surprise me here that they may wait.
Okay, we don't know. Nobody has any information, but we know it's pending.
In Santa Rosa, they required the property owners to sign a document that authorized the Corps of Engineers to come in to do it.
Right.
So before anyone does anything to your property, you're going to be offered the opportunity to determine if you want to have them do it or you do it.
Right.
And if you sign the document, it will limit what you're going to have to pay. And it will be limited to what you get for insurance. There's actually going to be a legal document that you have.
Yeah, you'll see it. So I would, based on the policy limits we're seeing here, I would, if it were me, knowing what I know, I would sign up for it. We've been to all these firestorms, and it just makes sense. It makes sense. And you'll see it's very, you'll go down there, you'll sign up, you'll have questions, and they'll roll it out. It's going to happen soon enough. Question?
So let's say they do come on our property and they damage our septic and basically our septic, and now where are we going to get the money to recover?
It's not covered. You're going to sign a waiver, a hold harmless waiver, which basically, that's why you want to be there. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can guide them and say, hey, stay away from this area, that's why look, it's your property. I encourage you to be there. These guys, again, are bulls in a china closet. They want to get in and get out. We got a question in the back.
Let me just respond to that coverage issue. So if the only way to demo your property means that they damage your septic system, I believe it would be covered under the policy, and you would just present a supplemental. And if they tell you ahead of time, the only way we're going to be able to remove it is we may damage your leach lines, you let the insurance company know about that.
Yeah, that's important. That's a good point. We're going to move on to, we got a question, then I'll move on to the next slide.
Our insurance has already given us money for the debris removal to us. Now, can they, I'm just wondering if that's a good thing, or we should have left it with the insurance company to deal with that.
Put it aside. That's just earmark it for the debris removal people, because they're going to come after it at some point. So just put it aside, make believe it's there. It's just, and then when that bill comes in, you pay them, and then the difference the government will pay. Moving on. Any other questions real quick on building? Yes, right here.
That they were going to start debris removal next week.
Has anybody heard next week?
Maybe they got a rumor or something they're passing on.
Yeah, maybe the hazardous stuff, the paint cans, the propane, so that stuff, and they're getting, but this is a huge event, so they've got a round table, right.
Yeah, I was just concerned because I haven't even seen my house, what's left of it.
Yeah, eventually they'll open up, the streets, and you'll get there and you'll sift and do what you gotta do at the property. We're gonna jump to bucket D, the loss of use, because that's a hot topic. Let me get there here. Okay. I got to go through all this stuff, and then loss of use. Okay, so on your policies, you've got two different verbiage. It'll either say ALE, additional living expenses, or FRV, a fair rental value. Okay, for those of you with AAA, they offer what's called fair rental value. It's what your home would have rented for, minus furniture, and you can negotiate that out as a payment, as opposed to them paying for the actual incurred rent and leasing of furniture. So, Kenny, why don't you talk about it, the ALE coverage?
Most of the policies out there offer what's called additional living expenses. It's the cost you incur to maintain your normal standard of living. If your utilities were $100 a month and now the place you're renting doesn't have good insulation and your Paying $200 a month in utilities, that's an extra $100. Your hotel, your meal expenditures above and beyond what you normally incur because you're having to go out to eat because you don't have a place to reside and cook. That would be part of your additional living expenses. The cost to go out and rent a home, the cost to rent furniture. A lot of the carriers have relocation companies where they set it up directly for you and there's a direct pay. Most of the policies are not limited to a dollar amount, just time-wise. And it pays for those additional living expenses you incur. There will be additional living expenses for mileage. You're entitled to be reimbursed for all of your mileage. And over 2 years, it can add up to thousands of dollars because you get paid 56 cents a mile. If you had to relocate out of the area and stay in Sacramento after the fire, you're entitled to be reimbursed for that mileage that you've incurred.
Let me just jump in on the mileage thing. There's an app out there called Mile IQ. Mile IQ. It's $4.99. It tracks all your mileage for you. It beats having to log it in on your dashboard at night and all that. This thing tracks you. You swipe right. If it's business related, meaning because of the fire. It's swipe left. If it's personal, at the end of the month, it'll tally it out. The IRS approves of it if you use it for taxes, but it's a great app, Mile IQ. I would encourage you to get it. Go ahead.
Yeah, just
Sorry.
two other things, and then we'll take some questions. On the living expenses, obviously your boarding of your pets. If you found a home but it's not fenced in and you've got pets, in my opinion, you're entitled to get a fence installed, whether it's temporary or permanent. If the home you moved into doesn't have window coverings, talk to the insurance company, you get window coverings. You're entitled to something comparable to what you had. If you had a 2,000 square foot home, you're entitled to rent a 2,000 square foot home. RV boat storage, Allstate had a big argument on a claim we were dealing with in Santa Rosa where they said, oh, that's not covered. And we were saying, no, they had a storage facility. They don't have one now. And it's part of your living expenses. And they were arguing it's part of the RV, part of the boat policy, which is ludicrous. Furniture rental, pretty much everything. And the only other thing I'd say is a lot of people aren't aware, and some people are looking into this now, there aren't homes to rent. And you're going to be out for 2 years or longer. Some of the carriers, and we presented this in Santa Rosa, and it made sense, people went out and bought homes and talked to the carriers, and we did this on a lot of carriers, to negotiate allowing the carriers to pay for the market rent of the home you bought. And
As a temporary home.
As a temporary home.
Not a replacement.
As a temporary, not a replacement. You have to make sure they're clear. Because once you replace your home, by the way, once you replace your home, your living expenses cease. But it's an opportunity, one, to find something, if you can buy a home and find it, and two, the living expenses pays the market rate, or the carriers may say, we're not going to pay market rate, but we'll pay whatever your carrying costs are, your insurance, your interest, your property taxes. But most of the carriers paid market rate. And it's an opportunity to get into some property too, and find something and find a place to live.
Let's take some questions. Here?
Yeah,
We'll be right there. Hmm? Go ahead.
Right here.
We have a trailer. If we put it on our property, does it all stop? It's our trailer, it's our property.
No, you're just, it's a trailer that you're living in to stay in because you don't have a house to stay in. Yeah. Now, you already own it, so maybe you can talk to the carrier and say, look, can I have some compensation for the use of my trailer, for the utilities, for the fact that it's going to wear out a lot more. But that's a discussion you have to have. Now, some clients bought fifth wheels right away. They had to. They didn't have a choice. We're, in fact, discussing that with the carriers. In Santa Rosa, they wouldn't even allow it initially. They finally did. The county wouldn't allow trailers to be put on the property. But most of the carriers, I think, are going to have to concede that. And if you think about it, what's it going to cost to rent a house now with furnishings? $3,000, $4,000? I mean, 3 years, that's a lot of money compared to a $60,000 fifth wheel. So I'm sure the carriers are going to buy into it.
So the key word here for your loss of use, your temporary housing bucket, is your standard of living is to remain the same, period. Your standard of living is to remain the same. I know that might prove difficult in the circumstances we're in here, but that's what it is. So you understand that standard of living is to remain the same. Yes, questions?
Yeah, I have
We'll
had
be right
sort
there.
of, I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
I've had piecemeal housing since this happened, and I'm with Safeco, and they want me to sign a temporary housing contract and put me in housing I don't want to be in. So, but they're not willing to sort of cover what I'm able to do here and there and everywhere until I find a more permanent place. So does each insurance company have their own policies around how they decide to reimburse you for emergency housing and stuff like that? Like, is that written in stone, or is there some fluidity there?
Okay, there is fluidity. The answer to that is yes, there are different policies. There's three things you got to look at. Time element, if your policy doesn't have any dollar limit in that bucket D, okay, or there may be a dollar limit. If you have $80,000 in that bucket, you got to make that last as long as you can. That's your budget, because once you're done there, they're off the hook. They're off the hook. And then there's the fair rental value, which AAA still is the only carrier that we know of that allows you to get paid for the fair rental value
Sorry,
of your home.
I just want to make sure, because I think your question was not so much the coverages, but why are they forcing me into signing this agreement, et cetera. So this is what I think is happening. Most of these insurance companies, they farm it out to relocation companies because they don't have the time to deal with it. There's nothing wrong with that. And what they're wanting you to do is to sign this agreement so that the relocation company will take care of putting you up in a hotel, setting up direct pay, looking for a house for you. So there's nothing wrong with that. I will tell you also, a lot of times people find their own place, and still the relocation company wants to, do the contract, because guess what? They're getting a piece of the action out of the pie. It's usually not an issue if you have unlimited loss of use coverage. If you're limited, then you may not want to do that. Although the short answer is you make sure with the carrier that it's clear that whatever their costs are, it doesn't come out of your loss of use bucket.
So am I or am I not bound to use that agency if I don't want to?
You're not bound.
You're not bound to use them, no.
Okay, I have one more quick question. If I rent a place for 2 years and then I end up buying it, and I've gotten paid from the insurance company to rent it, and then I turn around, it comes on the market, and I buy it, is there an issue with that?
No, they're just paying for your temporary housing. Questions?
Yeah, mine's kind of unique.
Bring it on.
The
We like you.
relocation people basically told us, good luck finding a place to rent.
Okay.
We've been in 7 hotels. We're now in Sacramento. They keep pushing us further and further away. And my question to them was, we own a property through a trust in another state. Would they, and we could, if we could rent that from the trust, could we do that?
Yes.
And they're investigating it. We went to our attorney today, the one that did the trust. He said, oh, no, that's illegal.
The trust, you're renting it from the trust.
It's not an irrevocable trust.
Kenny, do you want to talk about it?
I actually represented someone here in town. Maybe some people know him, Arthur Pollack. He's very active in Rotary, and he had a trust. And in fact, we were able, when he had a fire loss about 6 years ago, we were able to get the carrier to allow him to rent from this trust because it goes to the trust.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And quite frankly, you need a place to live.
I just want a kitchen.
Yeah.
I can't eat out anymore.
My heart goes out to
Yeah,
you.
so.
Yeah, but so the answer is yes. There is numerous cases where that's the case, where they do that. They do pay it.
Okay.
There's not, what's illegal about it?
Okay.
You're renting
Now,
it from a
they've
trust.
already given us an estimate of what we can rent. They've given us $5,000 a month.
Okay.
And I'm afraid what's going to happen next is that they're going to send us to Sacramento permanently and try to get us to rent there, and I won't do it, so.
look, this is your claim, take control of it. You're not, look, don't get forced into anything. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. That's the bottom line. We're going to get to these questions. The housing relocation companies get paid to find you housing. So if they don't find you housing, they don't make any money. And furthermore, if they do find you housing, they have another division that'll rent you the furniture too. So it's a double whammy for them. So it's in their best interest to find you housing. That's why oftentimes they're pretty pushy. I hear it all the time. They're very pushy.
And just make sure that, so the rental furniture, a lot of it's garbage. If you've moved in, you're finding that out. There's typically 3 levels of rental furniture. Ask for the top level. Just make sure you're clear. I had really nice furniture. I want the top of the line rental furniture.
All right, let's take some questions.
And that will be somewhat livable.
Let's take some questions, yes.
Yes. The insurance that I have has the loss of use, but it has a cap on it. So they were saying if I was to go with the additional living expenses, I just have to basically tell them how much I need, where I'm staying, and they'll pay for that up to that limit.
Correct.
Now, if I'm doing fair rental value, I have that option also.
AAA? You AAA or? No?
Merced.
Okay.
So, but I can do either or. Now, would it behoove me to do the fair rental value? Is there still a cap on that?
Yeah, there is a cap.
So the caps would be the same either way I go?
That's correct. Do the math. Some people want the cash and then they'll find their own housing, or they'll pay for the housing. It's one or the other.
Gotcha.
And
Thank
you can't split it halfway down. Like you start one way and then change the direction. You can't.
Right.
do
Right.
it.
Okay. Cool. Thank
We
you.
have a question here. Is there another?
No, I was just going to add on to that. I think that this is a part of the policy in this particular event where you really need to take some control and you need to extrapolate out what your long-term goals are. Some of you have policies that are just listed as actual loss sustained, and because of the size of this event, they've elongated that timeline to up to 3 years. Others of you are going to have a dollar amount in your policy. And even though they've elongated it to 3 years, you still only have the same dollar budget. So you need to extrapolate out that monthly budget and say, how long will I be covered for?
Questions? Okay. Hi.
So I didn't know about the mileage until just now, and we've been like commuting from Reading every day since it happened.
Okay.
How do we tell them about what we already did if it's not documented?
You're gonna hand that in at a later point. Just start logging. Start logging it in, and then just keep a record of it, and then you submit it. Because we don't know how long the loss of use is going to happen. Is it a year, 2 years, 3 years? You just don't know, and that's going to be kind of the tail end of things. Just hold on to the data, and when it's time, then you submit it.
So
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Well, if you were going to add on to that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question, actually. And so Reading from here, you can map it out, and I'm assuming, 70 miles each way? So that's 140, and you've done
times
10. That's 1,400 miles at 56 cents a mile. It's $800. Okay.
It adds up, folks.
It adds up. Just go back, figure out when you did, and just keep a log. And eventually you'll get into a living situation, and then you'll have a set standard. But
that's part of that 56
yeah,
cents.
you get either the mileage. 56 cents a mile government rate, it takes into account wear and tear.
Okay. Any more questions from you?
I just had one more because someone mentioned taxes, so I was curious, when they give us our check for the large amount or whatever, do we have to put some aside for taxes? Are they going to tax us on that?
So the question is this a taxable event? Is the money I'm getting from the insurance? It's not because it's a casualty loss. My understanding now, you'd have to talk to your accountant, is if you do nothing, if you get paid all your money for the dwelling and you go live in Pismo Beach in a bungalow for the rest of your living years and you're renting, at what point does it become income? It becomes capital, an income event. So there may be a tax issue there. But otherwise, my understanding again is that if you put that dwelling money into another dwelling, this is a casualty loss. So that's initially there's no tax event.
My understanding is personal property, no.
Right.
Building, there may be, and it's based on, it's like selling your house and getting money, and you know, you get taxed on the basis. But we are not CPAs, we're not giving you accounting advice. And the tax laws have changed a lot. It used to be a year ago, before the Trump tax bill was passed, you could use whatever your non-covered or excess losses are for like personal property. If you didn't have the right insurance, you could write off that difference as a casualty loss and lower your taxable income. That's been eliminated now.
We have a question here, and then
Yeah. Could you just cover again the difference between these relocation companies finding you a place and then you finding it on your own, and how
Sure.
that should work?
Sure, you have a choice. You can either find it on your own, and look, these relocation companies are in Georgia, Chicago. They're all over the place, and they're doing nothing different. They're looking at Craigslist. They're looking at listings. I think the best way to go is hire a local realtor. They have a beat on what's going on, what's coming up on the market. The local realtor usually gets half a month or a month's rent. The insurance company's going to pay somebody to find you a house, whether it's their vendor or the guy that finds you a place. So I would stick with local people. There's a connection there, and they're going to have a beat on it. So yeah, you can do that. Oh, and that's fine. I mean, you find it, that's great. You know, they're not going to pay you to find your own housing. But they'll, right. You can't profit from, he's thinking outside the box. I like that.
Hey, that's what we do.
Yeah, that's right. Question. Question down here. Oh, we got, hold on. One here, and then we're going to swing over. Yes,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, this one's highly embarrassing, but you guys are throwing out these really big numbers, and like for just to give you an idea of my insurance, I've got $23,000 for my
Loss of use?
temporary loss of use. That's going to go real quick.
It is.
And all my insurance combined is like $200,000.
Okay.
It's like I'm highly underinsured.
Okay.
And I saw something in your brochure about somebody getting more than the written value. Is that something that's actually possible? I mean, one of the reasons, nobody ever came out to look at the property. Nobody ever guided us, and all it was to throw out some numbers for us, and we'll put them in your policy.
Okay.
And not
So-
much thought ever went into it, no inspections, no nothing.
So the question I think you're asking is, can I get more than what my policy limits are? Well, first of all, I'm going to say you should measure the loss truly for what it is. Don't stop at your limit. You could have a $500,000 loss, and you only have $200,000 in coverage. Now you have a shortfall. There could be, if the entity is found negligent and there is a way to recover that, that would be a litigation issue. You'd hire an attorney to litigate for you to recoup any underinsured losses. Okay, I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that it's important to calculate truly what you've lost. Don't just stop at the limit. What did I really lose here, and how do I get more money? The policy has a limit. And another question we hear is my agent responsible? Well, they send you the renewal every year, and then you get a boilerplate letter that says, this is your renewal. Please look it over. If you feel that you need more coverage, call us and we'll discuss it. It's kind of a disclaimer. So really the duty is on you. You're buying this product from them, and it's really due diligence.
I'll just add one thing is
Yeah,
you
we'll be
do
right
have FEMA, and FEMA, I believe, will cover any excess losses.
Have to
So
qualify.
I would certainly go down to FEMA and
Yeah.
find out. I know, I think it's the most is like 200,000, but you should certainly do that.
Look, explore all your avenues. We have a question here, and then we'll be right there. Can we get a mic over here, Kyle? Thanks.
Our insurance company, relocation, whatever company, dropped the ball. We went out and found somebody.
Okay.
And they still dropped the ball. And I called my insurance company last night.
Okay.
And they said my rental value is $3,900. And she said she's going to send me $25,000 in advance.
Okay.
And that's a little over 6 months
Okay.
For rent. Do I have to keep going back and asking her for another advancements like this?
That's a great point you brought up. So they're going to issue 6 months of this temporary housing money. Yeah, that's what they usually do. Some carriers will pay a year. Some carriers pay 6 months and then a month to month. Look, if you can avoid the month to month game with the insurance company, please do it. Avoid it at all costs. They have check runs usually once a month. They're always late. Your landlord's going to be screaming for money. So if you can negotiate a longer lease agreement with the carrier saying, hey, can we get 8, 12 months, 15 months paid up front? It's going to be a negotiable issue, but try to do it. Try to get at least as long as you can because, again, the month-to-month is problematic. Yes?
So we're going on almost 3 weeks here, and we've been staying with family and friends this whole time, and nobody's going to charge us a dime.
Okay.
How do we, and we've been dividing it up between people, how do we go about recouping at least this first month or whatever until we actually get a receipt from somebody saying, I've rented you an apartment or a house or whatever? I mean, do we just have our family write up a, we're charging you $200 a
Yes.
night or $100
Yes.
a night for?
Yeah, great point. If you're couch surfing, the people's homes where you're staying, whether it's friends, relatives, whomever, they're entitled to room and board. Because if they weren't there housing you, you'd be in a hotel for $200 a night and then some.
But they get taxed, and they ask for their social security.
Then have the insurance company pay you and then you'll give it to them.
Which means you'll have to pay, well, you got to push it, but instead of, you can have like a lease agreement set up, or you can have a lease agreement set up, pay them directly, and then ask the insurance company to reimburse you. So that way they may avoid having a 1099. I can't tell you that for certainty, but it may avoid it.
Any other questions on housing? Yes. We'll be right there, ma'am. Sorry. Okay. Yes, once you rebuild or replace, they're done. They're off the hook. And it's called a period of restoration. This is language in your policy. Ken mentioned it earlier. You got to move with diligence and dispatch. Once they give you money towards the rebuild or replacement, doesn't have to be the right amount. Once they give you some money, the clock starts ticking. And then somebody at corporate in the glass office at your insurance company is going to make a decision that we're going to give them 8 months, 12 months, 15 months to rebuild or replace. Then they shut that faucet off. Okay, so you need to again communicate with them, let them know what you're doing. We're talking to realtors, we're talking to the contractors, and that keeps that bucket flowing. Does that answer your question? Yes, right here. Hold on. We'll be right with you, sir.
I'm kind of in the same situation as somebody earlier that mentioned they have a very small amount of cost of living for the future.
Housing?
Yeah, for housing. The insurance agent gave us, or the adjuster gave us about half of it up front.
Okay.
Do they have a limit of time? Like, can they stretch it out as long as they want to pay us the other half? Or can we kind of
I would try to get
insist?
the whole thing. Just say, ask them the question, what's stopping you from paying me the limit on the loss of use? I'm short,
But the reality is they do have the right to ask for the receipts.
Right.
That's so that you prove that you've actually incurred the expenses up to what they already gave you before they release the next tranche. It doesn't mean it's not worth the fight to ask for it on the front end. Well, you're within the time limits of the policy of how long you can utilize the additional living expense coverage, which in this event is up to 3 years. So it sounds like you're going to run out of coverage well before you get there.
Okay. Got another question here. We're going to move. We're going to get to you. Go ahead. Kenny has a point he wants.
Yeah, just if you have fair rental value, and I'll have to get a copy of the Merced policy. CIG, I think offers it too. And what it means is they, like we said earlier, they'll pay you the fair rental value of your home. CSAA won't pay, or AAA won't pay for a furnished home. I believe some of the other carriers that offer that will pay for furnished homes. And that can be a big number now because it's based on not necessarily before the loss, but what it would be now.
Right here.
You can collect that and maybe you're incurring less. If you have fair rental value option, and again, there's only maybe 2 carriers, maybe 3 that offer it, you can collect that money and decide to live in a fifth wheel or your RV, or to live in a smaller home if you had a much bigger home, and pocket the difference.
It's up to you. We have a question. Yes, sir.
Expand briefly on the your home would have. That's the home that I was burned out of?
What your home would have rented for, yes, that's correct.
Prior.
Yeah. It's what your home would have rented for minus the furniture. Before.
Well, that's a good question. So typically, I guess it'd be interesting. The carriers could argue before, but they didn't do it. They looked at after.
Yeah. You want to max out that coverage, again, same standard of living if you can.
Yes, for those of us that have a cap on it, as far as the
Dollar
amount of
limit?
money, the amount of money that's available. If we were to keep records, are you guys aware if FEMA will cover any of that? Because once I go over that cap limit, the only way I can, continue to survive would be to start to take money out of my personal. Well, if I start doing that and there goes 50 grand after 3 years because I can't build up there until then, then I don't have anything to rebuild with. So that's
Apply. You have nothing to lose.
I already applied, yeah.
Yeah, you apply. You're either going to be in one pile or the other. One pile is you don't qualify, and the other pile is you qualify, and then you go through the program with FEMA. So it doesn't hurt to apply, because if you're going to have potential underinsured losses or money coming out of your pocket to survive, maybe you do qualify. So everybody has a story. Every narrative is going to be different with FEMA. Everybody's situation is different. Any other questions? We're going to move on to bucket B. Okay, going backwards here. Okay, so bucket B is that separate structures coverage. It covers garages, workshops, detached fencing, retaining walls, walkways, driveways, patios, sprinklers, exterior lighting, anything that's detached from your structure. So if you have a fence going around your property, but it's attached to the dwelling, then it's part of the dwelling. And this is typically 10 or 20% of coverage A. That's normal, unless, again, you called your agent and said, hey, I just built this big barn and workshop, and they usually will increase it. So look at that. That's real money, and you're owed it. So in that example, the $400,000 base limit for the dwelling, we have $40,000, which is 10% of that $400,000. Some of you may have extended replacement cost. The Hartford policy, the Liberty Mutual policy, in the event of a declared catastrophe, it kicks all those buckets up. So you want to look for that. So this would be, $80,000. Debris removal, your debris pile is not just the house. It's the contents of the house. It's the fencing. It's the walkways, the driveways, all that. So debris removal, you're entitled to this as well. And code upgrades. Kenny, are they always entitled to code upgrade here?
Depends on the policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you want to look for
Sometimes
that.
the policies only cover you for code upgrades just for the dwelling.
Right. Any questions on other structures? It's a real easy bucket. Yeah.
On the fences, you have an apron. You both claim it?
50%. The insurance company will pay 50% to you, and then their insurance company will pay 50%. A pool? Pool is other structure, yes. If the pool's been damaged, how many here have a pool? Okay. I'm not sure that the debris removal company, whoever ends up doing it, is going to cover that. So then the question becomes, as a homeowner, is my pool, if I salvage it and mitigate damage and it's there, and I want to sell my lot as is the pool going to add value to my lot, or does it take value away? So these are the questions you're going to ask yourself, but the debris removal company will not remove your pool. Yes, Pat?
In Santa Rosa, people that had pools that were undamaged didn't want the water in,
They didn't want, but doesn't that cause hydrostatic lift?
They weren't worried about that. They were worried about mosquitoes and all that kind of stuff in the water.
But was that without the homeowner knowing about it? Interesting. Yeah, we got a bunch of questions coming up. Yes, sir.
Putting green. So I had a very large putting green over a nice concrete slab. So is that a
other structure?
Other structure.
If it's grass or is it artificial?
It's it was concrete slab with artificial grass laid over
Separate structure.
Yes. Is that good?
But by the way, so what's going to happen for a lot of people, and this is important, and we'll take more questions, is for people out here especially, a lot of people have workshops. detached garages, you're probably going to blow through the limit.
Only if you got to look at your policy. We have a question here. Yes, and then I'll get right with you. Go ahead.
You mentioned fences that were attached to your houses. What about the fences surrounding your property?
Separate structure. Separate structure. It's the ones that are not attached to the house typically are considered a separate structure.
Okay. Yeah, it goes all the way around the whole perimeter of the property.
If they're attached to the house, you could, sometimes they're, depending on the policy, considered part of the dwelling. And by the way, the whole concept of why we wanted to talk to you about this is you've got these two buckets of coverage. You may have one bucket that's underinsured, other structures. Maybe if that fence is attached to the house, I'd argue it's part of the building. I'd also argue that if you've got a septic system and a well, it services the house. I could argue that that well and septic system is part of the dwelling because maybe I have 50% extended replacement. I've got lots of insurance. So I want to move what I can in separate structure over to the dwelling because I know I'm not properly insured. And that's where we come in and that's what we do.
Any other questions about other structures? It's a pretty easy bucket. And you made a great point. Most people are underinsured in this bucket. Well, we see that quite often. Okay, moving on to bucket C, personal property. This one can take years off your life, folks. No joke. Like I said earlier, you could have 8, 9, 10,000 line items of stuff that's stored in the garage, up in the attic, and under the bed, stuffed up in the closet.
You can pass this around as a personal property.
This is one of the hardest claims to handle. Personal property is just that, it's personal. Okay. You're gonna now most carriers are giving you some advance money towards this bucket, and I've met some people that are getting a 75.
Chad, can you give me a personal property claim and just bring it in? I just want to pass it around.
Oh, 75% advance. Can you mute Kenny's line, please? Thank you. He does that often. Thank God he wasn't in the bathroom this time. Okay.
Just so you know, I was getting a personal property claim to pass out. There's one here. Okay. And there's some building claims that I passed out. You can bring them back when they're done, but please look at them.
So some of you will be getting or have gotten, or you can request in advance. I've met some families that have gotten an offer of 75% of their limit, and they're walking away. And the question becomes, how can you leave, 80, 90, 150,000 on the table? The insurance companies are banking on the fact that you're going to walk away because you don't want to do the work. That's what they do. And that stays in their kitty. So look, do the work. It's worth it. It's your money. If you don't get it, they keep it. So you're going to have a base limit. Oops, one more time, wrong button. So 300,000 in this example. You'll have a BPP is business personal property. How many people here have business personal property in their dwelling? Okay. Do you understand there's a limit to it? Kenny, do you want to talk about the limit?
Sure. Typically, it's usually $2,500 or $5,000, and it's for a situation where you have a business and it's business personal property that's in your home. But you got to be careful with that because it may be a desk or a chair or computers, but you also use it for personal reasons. So you want to make sure you're clear that, no, I use it for home. Once in a while, I use it for business. And typically when you put it in that perspective, they don't usually consider it. Because obviously, $5,000 isn't a lot of money or $2,500.
Oftentimes we hear these adjusters, and I've heard this quite a bit here, where they're talking to their adjuster, and the adjuster says, your jewelry and your furs all have, whatever, if there's furs there, have a limit. And that may not necessarily be true, because the limits are typically applied in a theft claim. They hate theft claims because they're hard to prove, so they put a limit on it. Now, when it's a fire, that opens up the door to just personal property limit, up to that limit. So look for scheduled items, watercraft, cash, etc. Cash definitely has a limit. I've heard stories people hiding a lot of money in their house, and $30,000, $40,000 it gets burnt up. There's a limit on it. What's it, like $500 or something? Yeah. So there's limitations. So on that.
I'll just mention about firearms. A lot of people I know have guns up here,
Yeah.
and they're confused. They say, oh, well, I only have like $2,500. Again, that's theft. Typically, when you have a fire, almost everything is covered, with the exception there's a limitation for watercraft and collectible like comics or stamps, and cash. Typically, when you have a fire, cash is limited to like $500 or $1,000.
Want to dispel the myths of replacement cost value. What does it really mean? You'll hear it over and over and over. Replacement cost is, here's the formula. RCV, replacement cost value, whatever that number is, less depreciation for wear, tear, age, condition, obsolescence, drives that replacement cost value down to what's called the actual cash value. So you take a sofa, for example. Everybody agrees it's $1,000 to replace, and it's going to be subject to depreciation for wear and tear, age, condition, et cetera. Let's say they take $200 off for depreciation. Now you get $800. That's your actual cash value payment. And what happens to my other $200? Well, they hold it until you replace it. Okay, so they'll give you back the $200 once you spend the $1,000. Do not get into the cat and mouse game with the insurance company. If you can picture a cubicle farm, and they're looking for ways to find that sofa cheaper from directbuy.com, warehouse direct pricing, okay? And they'll say, well, here's the same sofa. We only owe you $500 because we found it for half the price. Well, you may not shop that way. So you have to create a narrative. How do you shop? What's your buying pattern? Okay, you shop locally, you go to Sacramento, and these are narratives that you have to have with the insurance company to support your claim. Remember, the burden of proving your damages is on you, not them. It's on your shoulders. Any questions on replacement cost? Yes?
Does it matter what you actually paid for if you got a really good deal buying something used, but you're not going to get that when you buy it again?
Good question. Replacement cost is what it costs today to replace. Most of us are smart shoppers. We buy stuff when it's on sale, go to Costco, whatever it is. It's what it costs today to replace, not what you paid for it. Do you need receipts? No, you do not need receipts. Okay, that's a common one. Yes.
Including, by the way, tax, delivery, installation, warranties. You know, the warranty on the Scotch Guard for the sofa, the warranty for the appliances, the warranty for the TV and electronics.
That is good.
You know, if you've got an iPhone, you know, and you have that extended care coverage, so.
Yeah, that's a true picture of what you lost. It's not just, you know, the item, it's the delivery, like Ken said, and tax and all that. That's a true picture of what you lost, yes.
What about, like, for instance, my sons bought me for Father's Day last year a big screen TV thing for the wall. I don't know what brand or what it was.
You're going to do the best you can to recall from memory what you lost.
Okay.
Yeah, and be as truthful as you can, because you're going to sign a document that says this is a true testament of what I've lost. So you want to be accurate. Do not make up things, guys, because everything's subject to audit, and the last thing you want to do is, you know, get put into an examination under oath because they smell something funny going on with your claim. Then you won't see your money for a while. We're gonna come around to you. Yes.
You say you have to kind of prove this, but I've been working on my list ever since this thing started, and there's pages and pages,
thousands of lines.
Are they going to go and look at every one of those things
Yes.
the same way I did?
Yes. Yes.
Holy
It's money. It's money, and it's money they have to pay you. And if the better detailed it is, and we'll show you what it looks like, the less leverage they have. Okay, the more devil's in the details. The more detail, the less leverage they have. It's when you leave things vague, they can interpret it a different way. We have a question here. We're going to work our way around. A lot of questions.
On your homeowner's policy, what if you have stuff in a storage unit away from the home?
Has it been damaged?
If the storage unit was burnt?
Yeah, you have 10% of coverage for example, if it's $300,000, you've got 10% off-premise rule, it's called, for any goods stored anywhere in the world. 10%. Okay.
And sometimes it's 100% depending on how the policy reads. One other thing, there was a gentleman talking about, you know, what do I value? How do I value? You don't have to prove necessarily that you had it, unless you're being funny with the carrier. It's a matter of documenting it. So one of the reasons I went outside was I've given you guys a sample claim, and it really shows how it's put together. Anything of high value, we source price. It talks about use and condition, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. That's important, and how depreciation should be applied. But what I wanted to share with you is that the carriers know that typically most people only replace a third of what they had. And that's why they have actual cash value. They know you're not going to replace it. And so therefore, when you put together your claim, you may be way below the limit. So you want to get as high of a value as possible. You want to make sure you include everything: the wooden hangers, the wooden shoe trees, the photos that you had from the 35-millimeter camera, the cost to develop it. All those things add up. And then you want to negotiate as low of a depreciation as possible so you get that $300,000 limit or close to it or even above it.
So let's take some questions. Yes. We're going to work our way over.
When we expressed our hardship on doing this inventory and so forth, we were reassured by the insurance that they would be helping us. They have their template, and they would also come up with the values for us on the list.
They love to do that. I would never allow it.
I didn't say anything.
Okay, so that's a great point he brings up. Remember the cubicle farm example? They're looking for it, and if you allow them to value it no different than your house, you're setting yourself up for failure. Unless you're grossly underinsured, then you need to do the work. They're going to make you work for it, and Kenny brings up a great point. A lot of people have a lot of stuff, and they know it. You're not going to replace everything, so they're going to keep that depreciation. So the goal to alleviate the cat and mouse receipt game, and you have to hand it in 2 years from now. You buy 5 shirts, and they paid you for 10, and they're like, "Well, these aren't the same shirts," and you'll lose your hair. That's what happened to me. So and again, it'll take years off your life. I'm telling you, it's a hard claim to deal with. More questions right here.
So it's kind of similar to his. I was talking to my insurance guy, and he said that they group it into things. So like toiletries and stuff like that. And he said that he would send me a spreadsheet that I could fill out if I wanted to, if I was good with Excel, and then I could send it back to them because it's the same spreadsheet that they use. They're not like a very big company, so I was wondering, is that like okay, or is that a trap?
That's a great point she brings up. It's called categorical inventory. Some carriers will do it. We've got a question over here. Some carriers will allow you to do categorical, like outdoor furniture, and it lumps into one number. Kitchen goods. And that helps you get things done faster, but what it does not do is give you the details that you need to get those numbers up. So it's kind of an advantage for them. Now, you can do it on a napkin if you need to. You don't have to use their template. Yes. Is there part two, or we'll circle back around, and we've got this gentleman, sir. Go ahead.
Oh, it's me.
You're
Okay,
on.
so I got one from my insurance. It was a lifestyle questionnaire.
Yeah.
So they're not really wanting me to list individual things. They want a sense of each room in my house. Do you caution me against that?
No, that makes sense. So it goes back to the buying pattern. How do you shop? Where do you shop? It's a lifestyle. They're trying to get a feel for how you live. That makes sense to me. Yeah. Yes, one more over here, and then we're going to move over to you. We just want to kind of work our way this way. Did you have another question? Just details. You don't have to do categorical. Again, they're trying to expedite the process for you, and it sounds really easy and great, but if you're under the limit, when you add it all up and you're still under, you need to get the details in there, and that'll bring the numbers up.
You can do categorical if you want to, if the carrier allows it, but you want to also separate out the more expensive items. And ultimately, before you turn it in, you'd like to get an idea, am I going to be doing it, if I do it this way, am I going to be way above the limit? Because they will depreciate everything down.
We have a question here, and then we'll be back over on that side. Sorry, Kyle.
What about cars or trucks that are non-opt on your property that you own?
Automobiles?
Automobiles that have no insurance on them because you have them non-opt on your property.
Motorized land vehicles are excluded under your policy unless You have an ATV that's used to service the lot. So if you have 5 acres and you got an ATV to get across the land and it services the lot, then it's covered under personal property. But even if it's unregistered, it's not covered, it's an exclusion. Okay? Let me get, yeah.
I just wanted to add on to the answer to the question over here about the categories, and you were working with the insurance company and they're wanting you to go back and forth with the spreadsheet. One thing to consider would be every time you send them that spreadsheet, they're getting a recorded snapshot of what your opinions and your representations were at the moment you sent it. And you lose some of the inherent flexibility in the process by approaching it that way, because what you're not able to do is take a look at everything and then look at your policy and say, am I best served doing this category approach, or would I be better served breaking this down into detail? And it really depends. It's an individual case-by-case scenario, because it depends on how well the policy responds to what it was you lost. If you're sending spreadsheets back and forth, you no longer have that flexibility. So we're pretty big proponents of working and getting your documentation settled behind closed doors, taking a look at it, making sure it's really thorough and it's what you want to be pushing across the table, because you only get one opportunity to make that first impression when you give them the documentation.
Oh, that's a good point.
They're bringing it, I don't think everyone heard Pat.
Yeah. So Pat, do you want to give him the mic? This is a good point. Pat's out in the field. He's our field guy. He's incredible.
What you want to do is when you turn in the categories, you want to put like a disclaimer in it that you have the right to do it on an individual basis if it doesn't give you the number that you want. So if it doesn't reach the limits of your policy and you think that if you went through the details you were going to get to the limits of your policy, you want to have that right. So by turning in the categories, you don't want to limit it to your claim to just that. You want to have the right to still list everything out if it's going to be better for you.
Or it's a preliminary claim and you reserve the right to amend it at a later date.
Okay, we have a question here, and then, sir, Kyle, you got that one? Yes.
Okay, we're supposed to meet with our agent tomorrow morning, and he said, just bring me an itemized list tomorrow and we'll go over everything.
Okay.
I'm not prepared for
Right,
that, and
it's okay.
I don't want to show it to him at
Did you
this
say
point.
your agent, your insurance
Our
agent, or is it
insurance-
adjuster?
Probably the adjuster.
The adjuster.
Adjuster, I
Yeah,
guess.
the agent's different. Okay. Look, if you're not ready, you're not ready. Do not be rushed through it. They want to go home. They're out of state. They want to go home back to their families. I get that. But don't rush. You've got time. You're not ready. This just happened. You're trying to find housing. So when you're ready, you're ready. You can start working on it. Keep a pad and pencil. We're going to go through what a sample inventory actually looks like. But, yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
I'm going to jump in.
Good.
You know, another way to look at this too, folks, is if you have $150 or $200 or $250,000 in your personal property, and you look at this as a daunting task, which it is, but if I were to come to you and say, I'll pay you $250,000 for 3 months worth of work, you would typically change that tune real quick. So
That's a good point.
if you do a little shift of how you're looking at this, and you take your time because you don't have to be rushed, and you look at this as a part-time job that you're going to put 2 hours a night or 3 hours a night, or some of you 8 hours a night, change the way you're looking at it mentally, and it'll help you get through it.
You don't have to give him this, this 5-page list tomorrow and say,
No, you're not ready. You're not ready. Just tell them, just call them, cancel. Just say, I'll see you next month when I'm ready. It's
No,
okay.
You don't need to rush through this. This
We'll be
is,
right with
when it comes to personal property claims, unless you're underinsured or unless you have a carrier that is saying, well, we want to just pay you your limits, it is somewhat of a marathon. You want to make sure you get it right. And you want to be controlling it. Because the minute you start giving it to the carrier, that's when they become in control.
Yeah, the idea is to strip away the leverage from the insurance company by hitting them with many details as you can, getting as much of an advance. So for example, if you're getting 50 or 75% advance against that bucket, now you're only negotiating this much, not the whole thing. So strip away that leverage, get as much as you can, as long as the advance check says undisputed amount, or it's an advance against the bucket, the limit, as long as it doesn't, you do not want it to say final settlement. We have a question.
I have
we lost a house full of antiques.
Okay.
Now, we've had them for years, but I paid for them what they're valued at now. Who determines that?
So, first of all, in the insurance world, the antique is 100 years or more. That's when it qualifies as, okay, so if it qualifies, get on the web and you look at Sotheby's and these auction houses that, what period is it? Is it a Tudor? Is it a Victorian style? And then you can find these auction houses online that have similar items, and you can prove that that's what it was.
I didn't know where to look for even, because they ask what the value is.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't determine that. You know, I do know a
Antique
little
dealer.
bit, but,
Yeah, you'd be surprised, you know, if you're computer savvy, you can get a lot on the internet, Google it. There are auction houses. You can go out and get an appraisal done. We've done that for some of our clients that have high-end antiquities. What's important to know about the antiques is that they are not subject to depreciation.
Good point.
It's market value. Antiques, fine china, art, fine silverware, and some collectibles are at market value, not subject to depreciation. Craftsman tools or Snap-on tools, lifetime warranty, people, they don't necessarily depreciate. And just to talk about personal property, whatever you think you had, our experience with the clientele is usually they're undervaluing everything by 30 to 40%. A garage is a perfect example. We've had inventories of $150,000 in just a garage alone.
Here's another way to look at it. If you take your house and you dumped every single thing out and you put it on sale, full retail, and it's sold, everything's sold for full retail, plus tax, plus delivery. That's how to kind of picture it in your mind. Okay, we got him, and then we'll be right with you.
So I should have asked this question earlier, so I apologize for this,
That's okay.
but I have a large family, and my insurance company has only given us $10,000 for the rental portion of whatever they're giving us.
Mhm.
What is your suggestion on getting more from that? Because $10,000, that's not going to get me anywhere. That's
Is
going to
that-
get me 2-3 months, and then we're out.
Right. Is that in advance? They gave you $10,000 advance?
Not as far as I know.
It's not a final
it's just
settlement.
A limit.
Yeah, so typically it's just an advance. Some people get 10,000, some got 30,000. It's all over the map. So yeah, you can ask, you can request. And by the way, it's not in your policy. Either it's either residential or commercial that they owe you in advance. It's given at a time like when these firestorms happen. So I would request as much as you can. There's nothing wrong with asking for 6 to 10 months advance against that loss of use bucket. We have a question here.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I'll be right this.
I had a hobby as restoring antiques and also doing like working with Japanese woodworking tools and restoring American woodworking tools.
Okay.
So I had like specialized files and rasps, and
Okay.
they are expensive to obtain, even if you're able to get them at discount by mistake.
Mhm.
So how would you handle that?
Are you making a living or are deriving an income from those tools?
Okay.
Are you?
No, it was
Is it a hobby?
Yeah.
Then it's personal property.
Okay.
It's going to go into that personal property list.
Value it at full retail.
Yeah, whatever it, find it online somehow.
Okay.
Do the research and you'll find them, or something similar online to substantiate what you're claiming.
by the way-
You can be as aggressive as you want, but you got to defend it. You can be as aggressive as you want, but you got to defend it. Yes, sorry.
This kind of goes back to the mileage question. For those of us that have to go back home and live in the midst of that mess, and we have to take our kids to school, to Chico or whatever, do we get to claim mileage for that now that we have to travel down the hill?
Yes.
That's all additional living expense. It's all covered. One last thing I want to point out, the gentleman had the question about the advance. A lot of carriers sometimes, that $10,000 advance, it may be against the personal property because many times they don't always advance monies until you actually submit receipts for living expenses. So what you want to make sure you do right away is ask for a large advance on the personal property. You know, it's not, you know, I think State Farm is only giving 25 or 30%, but for sure you've got losses 50% or way more than the limit. So it's kind of silly, and they should give you like a large advance on your personal property, and then you're not stressed, and you can use that to begin the loss of use.
Yes, ma'am. Hi, thanks for your patience.
I had also an antique question. We didn't buy ours. They were inherited. I was the fourth generation.
Okay.
There are things on there that I can't find online, like a handmade lock out of wood that was done by a great-grandfather eons ago.
Okay.
Is there someone that you go to find out a value for things that are that unusual?
I would call antique dealerships. The issue there, I think, is that you've got someone made it. It's a piece of art, really, is what it is. Even though it could be 100, 200 years old, it's a piece of art, right?
Okay.
Because it's a one-off.
It is.
So,
it hung on the wall.
that's
Yeah.
right. So you value it as artwork and try to find something similar, a wood carving that may be same size. And they don't pay for sentimental value, just so you know. But that's how I would do it if it were me. Questions? I want to make sure we answer everybody's questions. Any other questions? I'm going to move on to what? Looters. You loot, we shoot. I see that at every firestorm. I can't hear you, sir. I'm sorry. Can you give him the mic? Thanks, Kyle.
So does it cover, we threw a bunch of stuff in the back of the truck, took off, stopped, got gas, was eating, came out, and some of the stuff in the back of the truck was gone. Does that fall under
That's considered a theft claim. So you'd file a theft claim. You'd have to have a police report, and that's how you handle it. So, yes, question over here? Oh, sorry, we'll get right to you, sir.
Just briefly, you said firearms, but in addition, I mean, rare art that is I can only document it by photograph, but what if that piece of art was worth more than my entire limit of personal property claim?
Well, then it's a quick way to get to your limit.
Okay, thank you.
But to receive the money
Yeah.
doesn't have
Yep.
anything to do with the...
They're going to audit the expensive items. When you hand in your 8,000 line item list, the guy upstairs or the woman upstairs is going to be looking. They don't care about the toothpicks and the spoons. They're looking for the $2,000, $5,000 line items. Then they kick it back downstairs and they want more information. So be ready to defend those high dollar value items. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've received two payments from the company. There's one earlier, and then they just sent another one. Does that have anything to do with the beginning of your starting of your 2 or 3 year limit?
I don't know. That's the question you need to ask them. When does the clock start ticking on my dwelling, on the dwelling for the loss of use? When does it start?
Okay.
It's called a period of restoration.
Oh, okay.
So when does my period of restoration start? That's what you want to ask.
That's okay.
You also need the check of what those checks were actually for,
That's
which
correct.
buckets of coverage they came out of. There should have been some sort of note with it that tells you which
We'll talk
coverages it's
about
coming
that
out of.
later.
Okay, we have another question in the back there. Yes, sir. We'll be right with you.
To rebuild, do we have to refund the loss of use?
No.
No.
No. That bucket pays for you've lost use of your home, and it provides for your temporary housing. The question is, how long can I have that benefit for, and what dollar amount is there available? That's the question, so, and in this market, the way things are, and the town got wiped out, these are hard questions, Yes.
Where do you begin?
Yes.
I was warned when I was down there signing up for FEMA to make sure that none of my checks say final.
Correct. Yeah, so good point. He said,
That they slip that in sometimes.
yeah, so that's a good point he brings up. Thank you. Sometimes these checks come in and it says final payment, final settlement. Make sure, the check comes in with a stub, that check register. Make sure it says either advance or undisputed amount towards settlement. Those are the things you need to look for. Okay, we've gotten a few adjusters from way down south in the East Coast that do that stuff. And yes, it's ugly. I'll tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly out here. So, other questions? And you didn't even know about it? Kick it back. You just write an email, say, I refuse this payment based on, we're still negotiating the claim. Thank you. Or I'll consider this in advance. Please change the check to mention in advance. Thank you.
And ask them to give you an email saying that they're not going to hold you as a final payment and give you the authorization to cash it. Then you don't have to send it back in, but get them to put that to you in writing.
Reno.
Okay, we're gonna show you what kind of a line item looks like in an inventory real quick. So, of course, is the quantity. That's your first column. How many of the items did you have? In this example, we'll say the first line is women's jeans by Ryder Vintage. Okay, that's important. Not just women's jeans. This is the key, Ryder's Vintage. You want to be specific. Today's replacement cost, she had one pair of jeans there, $100. It's right here, so it's $100 replacement cost. Cost source, where did you get the sourcing? Oh, I got it at Macy's. That's where I shop. So that's important. So every line in the Excel spreadsheet matters. Then depreciation, in this example, it's 50%. Okay? And every line item, the 9,000 line items get looked at individually, and they all depreciate at different levels. So that brings it down to the depreciated value of $50. And the insurance company is now holding $50. When that person replaces the jeans and submits that $100 receipt, they're going to catch a $50 check back. That's cat and mouse. Don't get into the game. Get all your money. And the only way to do it is by killing them with the details. They hate the details. So for you to walk away with $300,000 in this example, you'd have to have a claim of somewhere around $350,000, almost $400,000, because they're going to depreciate that number down. Now remember, no fraud. You got to be realistic, and if you can defend it, that's what's important.
So what's important to know, and I'm going to start off with a question. So if I've got a mattress, and that mattress is 18 years old, and it's got a 20-year life, carrier would probably want to depreciate 85%. Doesn't mean that's how it works under the Department of Insurance regulations. It used to be that way. It's now based on what's called use and condition. So that inventory booklet that you're seeing that's been passed around, it has condition codes, and we do that for every item. So that same mattress, and this is an actual story, insured with Nationwide, elderly couple, they were pushed real hard to get their inventory in. They submitted an inventory that was at least $200,000 understated because they put original prices, and they had furniture in spare bedrooms that were 20 years old. But the condition was that of maybe 1 or 2 years old because their kids moved out and the rooms hadn't been slept in for almost 20 years. So therefore, the depreciation for that mattress and bed set may only be 10%. No different than if you've got evening jackets or nice dresses that you only wear once or twice a year for the holidays. No different than your living room furniture versus your family room furniture. The living room furniture, how often is someone sitting in it? So you want to make sure you put a condition code for everything so that you can minimize that depreciation. So instead of the depreciation overall being 30 or 40% or 50%, maybe it's only 25%. So every item that you have, or majority of the items, you want to put a condition code. Because you may have something that's brand new. My wife's got clothes in the closet that still have the price tags on them, and she's never worn them. And they're 5 years old. They're new.
So to avoid the cat and mouse game, again, in this example, let's say you do an inventory and the top line replacement cost is $400,000, and even if they take $50,000 off, now you're at $350,000. That's that depreciated value. The $350,000 is above the limit. Now they commit to it and they have to pay you. That's how you do it. That's how you want to do it. Okay, but again, you have to defend it. Yes. So for example, let's say you do a list of everything in your home, detailed, you price it out and everything, and it comes up to $400,000. That's what it costs today to replace. And let's say they depreciate $50,000 off of that. Now you're down to $350,000. Okay? That $350,000 is the depreciated value. That $350,000 is above the $300,000 limit. And they have to commit and pay you the whole thing. Yes. That's how you do it. Yes. Oh, yeah, and then her. Yes.
Real quick question. There's a lot of good information. Is there anywhere I can go to find this slideshow Or is there a pamphlet up here that I can just look over constantly and look over and look over of what you guys are showing here?
Yeah, there's we give some, what do they call the inventory primer? Yeah, just grab one on your way out.
That's what everything's in right there.
Well, it gives you an idea of how to do it. Yeah, it's a tool.
And you know what, Reno, we do have some spare memory books. A lot of these people
Okay.
are going to need
Whatever's
some
out there,
help.
we'd be happy to give out. Yes, hi.
You were mentioning that whatever limit we come up with, or whatever, not limit, but the amount that we come up with, we're going to have to defend it.
Yes.
How
do you defend it?
How do you defend it?
Well, if you're cost sourcing it at Macy's, for example, you go on the web, click on the page that shows the jeans at $100, Ryder vintage jeans, and that's it. And so you've got your list, your thousands of line items, and then on the back you're displaying the exhibit. You're defending it. So line item 3, page 2, that kind of thing.
So not receipts?
No, you don't need receipts. You want to avoid the receipt game. That's. You're going to know the condition of your items. Nobody else knows. The adjuster doesn't know. We wouldn't know. You do. So you either it's in excellent condition, it's in fair condition, it's in good condition. The idea is to reduce the depreciation as much as you can because it's negotiable and it's subjective. They're going to try to increase it to get below the limit, and your goal is to decrease it by providing the correct condition.
And I think it's important just to realize that it's not going to be perfect.
Right.
You're not going to remember every age. You're not going to remember every brand. It's designed to be a good faith representation of what it is that you've lost. Nothing more, nothing less. You just put your best foot forward and try to be as accurate and prudent as possible. That's the best you can do.
We've got a question down here. Mike's coming your way. Hold on.
So you keep saying avoid the receipt game. I've spent like the last 4 days going to every single retailer trying to get receipts because the insurance company wants to. So should I not do that?
Go ahead.
Yeah, you don't have to, there's no way to get all of your receipts. It's just impossible. What the receipts do, though, is it refreshes your memory and shows what you had. If there's something unusual, a Rolex watch, yeah, that makes sense. But really, you can go to Amazon, by the way, I understand, and they'll send you a list of everything you've purchased over the last 5 years. You can go through Home Depot and scan things. But the idea is not so much to prove what you had, but to assist in helping you remember everything that you had so you can price it. Because don't forget, when you bought these items, they were bought on sale. You want to price it today, brand new.
So a couple things that you want to consider: inventory tips and tools. Keep a pad and pen with you at all times in the car. 2 in the morning, you're probably waking up going, "Oh, I forgot X," whatever that might be. Draw out each room one by one. It's a way to jog your memory. In your mind's eye, visualize the drawers, bureaus, closets, etc. All the stuff that's underneath the bed, in the dressers. You just go systematically in your room, left corner, top. What was on? Was there a shelf there? What was on the shelf? And then you work your way down. Then you go to the next wall. So in your mind's eye, you're recreating your inventory. Look, use family and friends. Let them help you research the price items. You had a question? Everybody wants to help in this time. You get calls from across the country, or your relatives hear about your situation. Put them to work. Give them 4 or 5 pages. Price this stuff out. That really relieves some of the burden off your back. That's a good way for you to get help, and they want to help. Yes?
How does insurance companies determine? Do they go item by item, or do they just punch it all into a...
They go item by item. If they item by item. Yeah, they're looking at the expensive items. Look, it's dollars and cents. They've got your money in their coffers. Your job is now to
Every
get
carrier's
it out.
different, but most of them, especially State Farm, we've submitted inventories. We'll have to wait 4 or 5 months just for them to get back to us. It's crazy.
Yep, got a couple of questions here. Yes.
Yeah, we got with time.
Yeah, the issue of keeping receipts of every single thing that you've done since the fire. I asked my insurance company if I could download my credit card statement into a spreadsheet and filter that and submit that, and they said yes.
Yeah,
and I sure
that's
like
fine.
that better than keeping all those silly receipts.
Yep. Right. It makes it easier for them. Any other question? Okay, we're going to move. I'm going to move on. Okay, so who can represent you? Can an attorney represent you? Yes, but you don't have a legal issue, folks. You have a valuation issue. Okay, we get this a lot. Yeah, an attorney can, by law, represent your loss. But again, it's not a legal issue. Public adjusters, yes, we're licensed, bonded, tested. We all have multiple licenses, 15 to 17, 20 licenses across the country. So we have to have continuing education classes and be licensed. It's very stringent, and rightfully so, because we're public advocates. Contractors cannot represent your interest. Be careful. Back in the last firestorm up here in Paradise, there were some issues where contractors came in and used predatory practices, and they got sent to jail. Okay, so they got caught by the DOI, and be careful on that.
And I was just going to add, contractors can't negotiate or adjust claims. And here's what you don't want. You're going to get a bucket of money. It's going to be a lot of money. In fact, some of the amounts you're going to receive may even be more than what the house was worth before the fire with the market value. You don't want to just tell your contractor that who you're thinking using to build the home what your amount is, because that's what the contract will be. Just as how you approach the insurance settlement, you do the same thing with your contractor.
Okay, we have one there and there. Question? Yes.
Yeah, so when we bought our house, it went up in value since we had bought it. And our insurance agent, he said that since the car fire, you don't have to, how did he word this? You can still get that value when you don't rebuild. Does that make sense?
Market value maybe is what they're saying.
Yeah,
you can get your market value without the land, though. Without the
strip
land.
away the
We
land.
talked about that earlier, that a lot of carriers only have to pay market value. It's what your house was worth right before the fire without the land. And that's considered, under California law, an actual cash value payment. You still get your replacement dollars if you rebuild or replace.
Another question?
Yeah, with the volume of houses that were lost, and we have 3 years to rebuild, how are we possibly going to get enough contractors in to build in this mass within a 3-year and have
That's the $1 million
solid
question.
work?
Keep in mind the 3 years to rebuild has to do with your loss of use bucket, the temporary housing. Okay, you've got up to 3 years of benefits only until it runs out of money. That bucket, either you have a dollar limit, or with due diligence, if you're moving with diligence and dispatch, they'll keep that going. Some policies don't have a dollar limit, so you'll have up to 3 years. But if you're just sitting around and you got paid, a year and a half ago, and you haven't demonstrated that you're talking to contractors or realtors or architects or engineers, they're going to shut you down. Doesn't matter. That's period of restoration is what's in the policy. So you gotta show them that you're moving forward with the project.
Reno, one really important point, we didn't talk about it, is, and there was a question asked, well, what happens if I get a large advance? What's my time frame to replace personal property in case you're not going to hit your limits and your ACV value? The regs now state that once they issue an advance, not an undisputed ACV payment, but an advance, you have up to 2 years to replace your personal property in a catastrophe. Now, you can ask for extensions, and quite frankly, there's no way you're going to be able to replace your personal property after that initial advance. So what you want to do is tell the carrier, look, we haven't settled. I think it should be 2 years from the time I settle. And by the way, I may not have a home to put personal property in. So you want to make sure you extend it. And that 2-year time frame also applies to the building. So you want to make sure that there's understanding and agreement that you can't get that building necessarily rebuilt in 2 years, and that it should extend. That's really important.
We have a question here.
Yeah. Going back to the contractors, for example, you have to replace your roof. You have to have the house painted.
Get a bid. How much is it going to cost? So if you
Can
got
you
paid,
get a bid from different?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So as a smart consumer,
Get three bids?
Sure. But so let's say they paid you $100,000 for the damage. Okay. You're going to bid it out to contractors to get the
Right.
job. If you tell the contractor you got 100 grand, that's what
Yeah.
he's gonna charge
No,
you.
I know,
So,
I
right.
know.
So basically, you've got the 100,000 and you're gonna bid it out and maybe
Yeah.
you get it done for 70, 80,
So you're
90.
allowed to go out and get the
course,
bids and
yeah.
like, we got a well, because we're a farming company.
Mhm.
And we're able to go find out what it's gonna cost to
Sure.
repair the well, the pump house.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got a couple more questions. I just want to mention before we jump into the questions here, we're going to get booted out of here, so I want to move it a little. We've got, we've run. Yeah.
So real quick,
Yes.
say I go ahead and I get my generals,
Yep.
can I have them, can I pay myself?
No.
No.
You cannot do that. They'll strip away profit and overhead. You can't profit from a loss. Basically, is what the policy says.
I mean, that'd be great. And then it would be,
Yeah. No, I understand, but you.
so I had my generals, I couldn't hire myself.
Oh, well, if you're a general contractor, it depends on whether, if you're incorporated, but you could have discussions because you could say to the carrier, hey, look, I'm going to incur this anyway. I'm a general contractor, I'd like to do it. And just make sure and it's in writing, that they'll agree to pay the, quote, profit that they use in measuring the cost of repair.
We got one last question
I
we're
have-
going to take, and then
I
we're
have
going to
two short questions.
Yes.
The first one is how do you know your company will still be solvent in 3 and 4 years? that
Us?
You're dealing with? No, the insurance company that
Oh.
you bought your, not you.
They got plenty of money, believe me.
You guys
Your
look
loss
healthy.
isn't going to make them go bankrupt.
Look,
Okay.
yeah.
And then if you do decide to hire a public adjuster, how do public adjusters set their fees?
We work on a contingency fee. If you get 0, we get 0. We get paid on the back end of this. We don't take all the cases, and we look at them from a case-by-case basis. We do a policy review. We work on 10 cents on the dollar. So out of the 4 buckets, we would handle all 4, but we only take a fee on the building, if we got involved, the other structures and personal property, but not the loss of use. Okay, so, but again, if it doesn't make sense, we look at it 2 ways. Look, does it make sense to you, the consumer, and can we add value? Because if we can't add value, there's no sense in getting involved. That's why we're doing this, to help you help yourselves and share our knowledge base with you. Thank you. Insurance agents and brokers, they cannot represent your interests. There's Senate Bill 488 passed January of 2017, which pretty much alleviated. It's a conflict of interest. That's it for tonight, folks. I want to thank you for coming out. A lot of great questions. We're going to be here next Tuesday and the following Tuesday. Thank
And we're
you.
available to answer any questions.
Yeah, we're
but
gonna
we're
hang
gonna have
out.
to get out of here soon.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.